Alrighty, let's jump into our module of the week. And now to talk about that module of the week, Martin Anderson Klutz, a senior solutions engineer at Acquia and a maintainer of a number of Drupal modules of his own, is going to tell us about translation management tools. Take it away, Martin.
Thanks, John. Have you ever wanted to automate the process of creating content translations on your Drupal site? There's a module for that. It's called Translation Management Tool. The machine name is TMGMT, and it was originally created in January of 2012. It has 7.x-1.0-RC3 and 8.x-1.15 versions available, the latter of which works with Drupal 9 and 10. Now, it is actively maintained. It has test coverage and documentation, and it currently has 595 open issues, 139 of which are bugs against the 8.x branch, which is actually not bad when you consider that it's in use by almost 9,000 websites, probably many of which are using it for some pretty complex use cases. The maintainer is Berdir, who is a very prolific maintainer in his own right, and he also supports well-known projects like Search API, Token, Paragraphs, and many more. Now, Translation Management Tool works by providing a tool set for automating the process of creating your translations within your Drupal site, as well as strings used within the site like menus, interface text, and so on. It works with more than 30 translation service providers, including many that leverage human translators, but also AI-based services like DeepL and OpenAI. It has a plugin system to determine what text needs to be translated so it can be easily adapted to very custom use cases. With the module installed, the Translate tab on your node changes to have buttons that request a translation in each language. And then the translation, once requested, will run through states like unprocessed, active, and finished. It does also provide an option for continuous translation where new and updated content is automatically submitted for translations. It also allows for professional translation at scale using whatever kind of service works best for your site. And, as an aside, the need for robust translation capabilities is what originally got me started using Drupal. So it's great to see that there are enterprise-grade options for sites that need to manage translations at a wide scale. So let's talk about the translation management tool.
This is actually an interesting one because I've actually done a lot of translation, and previously I was using the Lingotech module and using their translation service. And one day I saw a talk. I don't know. I think it was at a camp, maybe it was at a DrupalCon, where they were talking about this and using kind of Google Translate to translate things. And I was like interested and just wanted to see what the user interface was like. So I installed it. It was super easy to get set up with Google Translate, and it worked really well. I was actually pleasantly surprised by the user interface, and I think it, like you said, it integrates into a lot of other services. So I think this is the module choice if you're using something like SmartLings or Translate.com. So actually, maybe Translate.com has their own module, but anyway. I think that the user interface is good, and the integration with a bunch of different services is pretty interesting. And you know what? Until you said it, I never actually thought of the AI translation road. So consider my mind blown.
We use this extensively at Red Hat, actually. This module and a lot of it's like add-on modules, continuous jobs, and we use MemSource, which is now Phrase, to do translations. But we have a couple of other strategies and initiatives we use to do translation. Because if you look at like some of our systems on the customer portal today, we actually offer machine translations for certain things because there's just tons of content. So translating the entire thing probably won't make sense if it's not going to like serve the customer base. But it has, like you were saying, John, it's got a really nice interface. You can tell that they've taken the time to actually work with it. And a lot of times many of us have worked in the contrib space, and you're like, yeah, it's great, it works. And then you look at it, you're like, except the UI is not not quite there, or you have to click on these 6 things.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. You can tell that they actually put the time into it, like like the whole like cart checkout system to get a new one or to auto submit them. It works with the translate tab, like it integrates with that directly. So you can still manually translate things just like normal with Drupal core, but you can also put it through the translation to TMGMT process. So it's been a really solid module for us. We've actually submitted a couple patches for continuous jobs and different things, but yeah, it's been solid for us.
Well, so are you guys using a translation service, or are you just doing your own kind of translation?
We have, I believe, and this is, again, Red Hat's big, right? So that's the teams, but we have a translation team, and I believe they run it through machine translation, and then they review it and fix it after.
Got it.
So they don't have to start from scratch. So something like that, especially with technical documentation, you have to look through it first before you put it out.
Yeah.
If it's more like colloquialisms, it's probably more spot on. But with this kind of thing, it's like, it can misinterpret things. But yeah, I believe that's what they do.
I was just curious if you guys were using a different service than the ones that I had mentioned before, just to see like what the experiences were. But.
It's MemSource, or they've rebranded as Phrase now, but they were MemSource before. Yeah.
So I'm actually going to have to take another look at this, because I do have a client that used it fairly extensively in the Drupal 7 days, but I don't think it made the jump to Drupal 9 or 10. And I think we're doing mostly manual translations at the moment, which might be why, but I'll have to double check and see if it makes sense.
Something else we're looking through, I know that our translation team, we're working really closely with them to try to automate some of these things even more closely. And it's really, really flexible, because it does let you like download a translation file and then do something else with it. So I know that they've been automating portions of that process on their own to make it faster for them to manage it. And I know that when we showed this to them, because we're also using it, I believe we're also using it in Drupal 7 on some of our legacy sites that are, being migrated. But when we showed it to them in Drupal 9, but not 10, when we showed it to them, they were just like, this is awesome. They were just like, their response was night and day between Drupal 7 and Drupal 9.
Yeah, I'll definitely have to check it out then.
I will say, I haven't done a lot of translation projects since D7, but this is one of the modules that I've kind of been researching, because I believe a lot of our clients are federal based agencies. I think down the pipe there's going to be a requirement here soon that some of these federal websites seem to have more translation options. So been kind of researching, to maybe get ahead of the curve.
Interesting.
Martin,
Canada has that law, right, about French coming out?
Yeah, I was about to say, I live in Canada, and so, certainly in my early days of working in Drupal, almost every website was bilingual, having English and French.
Martin, I was going to ask, do you know, or is there a recommendation on whether you would use this module, like if you weren't using a translation service? Like, so Drupal core is pretty robust. Is there any benefit to using this module as opposed to just core by itself?
Interesting question. I mean, it sounds like Melissa's probably used this module as much as anybody on this recording. Melissa, have you used it without like a service provider, just for sort of adding some more like process pieces for manual translation?
Yeah, we actually we have it's a custom patch, because it's too custom for what we're doing to contribute back. But we actually use it to separate out layout builder fields so that we can actually translate those as well, like run them through the system and then have it come back and put them in. And we use the asymmetric translation layout builder module for that. And then we're also doing when you don't need to do a service, because you don't have to run it through a service, you can actually tell it to export it as a file, and then it's a translation file, which means it's system agnostic at that point. And that's actually, I think, in a lot of ways what our translation team is going to look at doing, because then it gives them options of what service they need to use. If they want to run it through Google Translate, they can. If they want to run it through whatever, right? And and it's formatted in a way that translation services expect. It's a standardized output versus the translation that service that or the method that Drupal offers, which is all like, you know, in the form. You have to fill out the form and submit it because they're expecting you to do it through the UI, versus this, which allows you to be programmatic about it.
I now know who I'm going to reach out to when I have to start translating Layout Builder, because that's going to be in my future, I believe. So expect a Slack message or email or plea for help.
We have Layout Builder. We have Layout Builder with content moderation with translation. It's like, why not throw all of it in there?
All right.
I will say the most difficult issues to review have always been the translation stuff, from the core side at least.
Well, and I think this is a really important topic, and not that this is the main topic we're here to talk about, but I mean, I guess it branches, right, because of the needs review initiative. But I think this is something that doesn't get enough review from the community, it seems like, because if you install Drupal, the English version or whatever, like a single version or a single language on Drupal works great out of the box. Like everything is tested for. But the moment you go multilingual, the moment you add content moderation and make it more complex, right? Because that's not everyone who's using it, but a lot of the bigger places that use Drupal, like with like higher levels of need for control over their content, that's what they're gonna use. That's a lot of the reason they go to Drupal, is because it provides translation like this, because it provides these kinds of controls over how content gets out. And it's always this way where you install it, and then there's always like a little thing, like something along the way that becomes a big thing, because it's a space that doesn't get, I don't think it gets enough tests from core, this kind of setup.
I agree, more tests is always better, but I have to come to Drupal's defense a little bit and say, as somebody who has tried to localize things outside of Drupal, having one little thing versus zero support is great, because I mean most of the systems don't have infrastructure. I mean, how long was it before React could even do multilingual? Like it just couldn't handle the routing without like writing it yourself, period. But
yeah. I want to make sure that I say, I'm not saying that it's like don't use it. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that there's room for improvement there. And the thing is that it doesn't seem like that's being improved as quickly as everything else, because it's not the most common use case.
There's always room for improvement. But on that note, Martin, thank you for enlightening us to the powers of translation and another wonderful module of the week.
Thanks, Jen.